In 1962, top U.S. military generals signed off on a plan to kill American citizens and blame it on Cuba. The document sat buried in classified archives for over 3 decades, its existence unknown to the public, unknown even to most historians, until journalist James Bamford uncovered it while researching the National Security Agency in the late 1990s. What he found was a memorandum so unsettling that when it was finally released to the public through the National Archives, many refused to believe it was real. It was real. It carried an official title, Operation Northwoods. The year was 1962. The Cold War was at its most dangerous temperature. Cuba had fallen to Fidel Castro's revolution just 3 years earlier, and a communist state now existed less than 100 miles from Florida's coast. The Bay of Pigs invasion, America's attempt to overthrow Castro through a CIA-backed exile force, had collapsed into humiliating failure the year before. Washington wanted Castro gone, but Congress and the American public had no appetite for another war so soon after Korea, and no clear justification existed to invade a sovereign nation that hadn't attacked the United States. So the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military officials in the country, chaired by General Lyman Lemnitzer, drafted a proposal to manufacture that justification themselves. The document, formally titled Justification for U.S. Military Intervention in Cuba, outlined a series of staged attacks and acts of terrorism to be carried out on American soil and against American targets, all designed to look like the work of Cuban agents. The plan's stated purpose, written in cold bureaucratic language, was to provide justification for U.S. military intervention in Cuba by creating a series of well-coordinated incidents to take place in and around Guantanamo to give genuine appearance of being done by hostile Cuban forces. The specifics, laid out across the declassified pages, are difficult to read even now. One proposal called for staging a fake attack on the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay itself, blowing up ammunition, starting fires, sinking a boat near the harbor entrance, and even fabricating a fake burial of casualties to sell the illusion of a real assault to the press. Another section proposed blowing up an unmanned drone aircraft made to look like a passenger plane, while a real civilian charter carrying a group of college students was secretly landed at a military airfield, and the students transferred to a real flight under assumed identities, allowing the government to publicly report an American passenger plane shot down by Cuban forces, with a fabricated casualty list, while the actual passengers vanished into anonymity, presumed dead by the entire country. Perhaps most chillingly, the document explored the idea of a Remember the Maine-style incident, deliberately sinking a U.S. ship or staging an explosion aboard one near Cuban waters, blaming Cuban forces and using the resulting national outrage exactly as America had done in 1898 to justify war with Spain. The plan even proposed a campaign of terror attacks inside American cities themselves, including Washington and Miami, with real acts of violence and destruction against real American property, all falsely attributed to Cuban infiltrators, specifically designed to generate what the document called a helpful wave of indignation among the public. The Joint Chiefs of Staff signed and approved the document on March 13, 1962, and sent it directly to Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara for authorization to proceed. It was not a fringe theory or a leaked draft from a rogue officer. It carried the signatures of the nation's top military leadership, presented as a legitimate operational proposal. President John F. Kennedy rejected it. According to the historical record, Kennedy was reportedly appalled by the proposal and refused to authorize any part of it, effectively ending Operation Northwoods before a single incident could be staged. General Lemnitzer, its chief architect, was denied a second term as chairman of the Joint Chiefs shortly afterward, though he was later appointed Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, a detail that still puzzles historians given what he had proposed. For over 30 years, Operation Northwoods remained one of the best-kept secrets in American military history, hidden inside classified files at the National Archives. It was only declassified in 1997 under provisions of the President John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Collection Act, a law originally intended to release files related to Kennedy's death. And Northwoods surfaced almost by accident within that broader declassification effort. James Bamford published its contents in his 2001 book, Body of Secrets, bringing the operation into public awareness for the first time, backed entirely by the original government documents now publicly viewable through the National Security Archive at George Washington University. No part of Operation Northwoods was ever executed. No American was killed under its provisions, no plane was faked, no ship was sunk. It remains, by every verified record, a rejected proposal, but a rejected proposal that reveals something the American government rarely admits about itself, that the machinery of war does not always wait for real justification when a manufactured one will do.